Mojo Monday, Rick Hale. How are you?
Yet again, here we are. Mojo Monday, Brett.
I love it. We're still going through this book.
Yeah, we are.
I might know that guy somewhere, the Rick Hale guy. It's pretty exciting to go through your book with you, to be honest. I know it's a life project you did, yet it's kind of fun to dissect it with you and really pull out your personal commentary around what the words are inside this book. So thank you for doing this with us.
My pleasure.
We're running through chapter 7 today, the lucky 7, which is first things first. And ironically, you open this chapter with a comment called life in the career lane. And I got to tell you, I can't read that and not think about life in the fast lane, by the Eagles. But, what do you mean life in the career lane?
Well, for those that have succeeded at a high level at something, especially career and vocation, at some point you look up and realize you've created this massive trench that you're running through and you're burrowing, in barreling down. And I think it just becomes a consuming, if you're good at it, you love it, and it pays well, and it gives you feedback that's inspiring, man, it's easy to become consumed. So life in the career lane is once you really figure it out and you stop, trying to throw darts at everything, it's about figuring out, then you have to figure out priorities and how it doesn't overtake all aspects of your life. But life in the career lane, we countless times we've heard it that,
Sure.
Relationships are hindered or hurt because of, focus on career and, neglecting other aspects. So I was dead in it, when I depict the story in the book.
Well, I think there's a period of time when you start a career that you've got to over prioritize getting that career going, right? Like it takes time, energy. You got to put in the grit, the hustle, all that stuff. And what I'm hearing you say is at some point in time, you can't let that life in the career lane become the only priority. You'll have to surround it with other priorities in your life to live a rich life. Am I summarizing what you're saying well?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You can't say yes to everything. And at some point, by saying yes to certain things that are consuming time and energy wise, there's nothing left over to share with other experiences and people. And, and Gary talks about it in the one thing about the importance of, you hear people talk about balance, and Gary's perception is, there's no such thing as perfect balance. You're going to be, certain things are going to consume all of your time and energy to reach a certain milestone, a short-term sprint. But if you continue down that path, you're going to neglect things to the extent that one day you can't get them back, like relationships. Right. And so the important part of this is that, counterbalance is a really healthy way to look at life. And then you just have to be really aware of the impact of your decisions on other people around you, that inner circle. Often it's a spouse or your children or close friends, and, too much neglect, and you can't save it.
I've got a few friends named Gary, and I don't think they said something that profound. So I'll clarify. You're talking about Gary Keller, the author of The One Thing, right?
The author of The One Thing, one of my mentors. Yes.
There you go. So on Mojo Monday, I think you might have told this story maybe 40, 50 episodes ago. But you talk about it in this chapter around the kitchen island and your son, Alex. I think it's worthy of just a quick retell because it really kind of sets the tone for what we're talking about today.
Well, it was the realization moment when I looked down and it was crystallized and crystal clear that my priorities and my behavior were not aligned. And so one of that's to me a lack of integrity. When you say things are important and you profess to the universe, these are my priorities, but then your activities and behavior don't reflect it, there's a disconnect there. And again, I think it's tied directly to identity and your, frankly, just your integrity. I said it before, and that word's harsh because nobody wants to be out of integrity, but
right,
that's what happened.
Especially with yourself, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the stories we tell ourselves, if they don't align, man, it's like cancerous. So I just remember early in my career being the 24/7 guy, call me anytime, anywhere, any place. And I put other people in front of my family often early on. And sometimes you do. And that's, if it's really a priority and it's a momentary experience, just go back and amend those, the broken communication or connection. That said, I remember coming home and I would try to race into the house as quick as I could to at least look like I was present and, my heart would say, oh, I'm home, it's only 7 o'clock. And, but at the same time, I remember taking a call and, one night at like 7:15, and I'm pacing around the island in our kitchen. And I look over at my 5-year-old son, who's got his head, his hand to his ear, and he's walking around the breakfast room table, mimicking my phone, my behavior. And he's pacing around and he looks all serious. And at first I thought, oh, that's kind of cute. And then it hit me. I'm like, I'm really not role modeling the priority of being a great dad that I think I am and that I want to be. And so it set me back a few minutes. I immediately asked forgiveness from the person on the phone, but I had to hang up and I had some other things to attend to, and we'd pick it up in the morning. And lo and behold, it wasn't the priority I thought it was, but I was neglecting, my son at that moment. And I'm like, man, I'll never do that again. And I made two decisions. One, I would create boundary, and that I rescripted my voicemail to say calls after 7, and, will be returned at 6:30 in the morning. And then I did that and created boundary. And then I also went on a path of hiring leverage so that we could counterbalance. So someone else could take night calls and someone else could show houses on Saturdays or Sundays when, I wanted to commit to family time, because again, declared it a priority. Your day planner has to reflect it, or there's a lack of integrity. The
Yeah.
other thing I did is I didn't take calls in the house. Even if I had something, if I got home, I would finish all of my calls. We all have calls at the end of the day, catch up calls that you didn't get to during the day. I would sit in the driveway and hammer those out before I walked in, so that when I did walk in, I was fully present and connected and could really, at the heart level, and not feel disconnected
There you go.
or
You
distracted.
mentioned day planner. That's one of the talking points of this chapter, is how important a day planner is. And you got a paper copy sitting right there on the desk in front of you. I will always
I
poke
do.
poke fun with love around that. But
I'm old
talk to me
school.
about talk to me about why the day planner is so important.
Well, it goes back to the old adage that if you don't plan your day, someone else will. And if you're not strategic, it's likely that you'll push the ball down the field. But maybe if you're not doing your highest dollar productive activities and you're not invested in the things that give the greatest return per hour and the greatest impact on your life initiatives, at some point you'll probably wake up with regret, and you'll probably never fully evolve into that best person that you strive to be. And
Yeah.
so by planning it and by, dissecting, the wheel of life and going through all 12 categories and making sure that they're represented somewhere in your day planner, it's pretty hard to miss an opportunity to step up your game and do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. Ironically enough, I just had this conversation yesterday, because I had a unusual gap in my calendar in a couple weeks, and I was like, "Oh, a couple guys wanted to play a round of golf that day." Well, I didn't put it in my calendar, so I looked today. My assistant has booked stuff all through that time slot. So, if you don't put it in your calendar, it'll never happen, right? So
Yeah.
obviously it wasn't a priority to me in that moment, but um I think there's a conversation here around priority, but there's also a conversation around highest dollar per hour. So I could fill my day planner, I could fill my calendar with busy work. There's always work. What's the saying? Work fills the time allowed, right?
Yeah.
Um, but first things first, the title of the chapter really speaks to how do you spend your highest dollar per hour time on the highest priorities, and how do you make that happen, right? And I think your day planner is really a big part of that. No?
Well, and step one is that you have to recognize what your core genius is. What are you best at? And then make sure you overlay reality of what that core genius gets paid. What is the value to the universe? What I get asked, how do you know what you're worth? Well, it's what someone else will pay for that time and your wisdom and your experience. That's really what you're worth. There's some doctors that make a couple 100,000. There's some doctors that make 2 million a year. And the difference is their expertise. Maybe it's how they're marketed. Maybe it's who they're affiliated with, their track record. Maybe it's another level of education that makes them a specialist at the highest level. And so, maybe they even wrote a book and now they're renowned for something, and they're worth more because of the perceived value. But
Yeah.
irrelevant or perceived or real, people only pay for value, and value, cost only matters in the absence of value. It's one of my favorite sayings. And so the idea behind what you're worth per hour is to analyze your capacity to give. And then what does the universe, reward you for that gift? And then the better question is, am I doing things beneath that highest and best to the extent you're really, for instance, pushing paper and clerical work might be $15 an hour in value. In other words, you could trade or pay someone to do that, eliminate that from your day planner and replace it with $100 or $200 per hour work, which is consulting, writing contracts, negotiating, or building a business or possibly hiring. One of the biggest aha moments I ever had, Brett, was when I woke up and realized my job is not selling houses. My job is to be the best talent scout and to groom and grow talent on my team, because I realized I only keep a small percentage of their income. But at the end of the day, if I have 10 people doing that and I keep 25%, I'm 250 times more powerful than doing it on my own and by myself. And so that's the leverage question. And I realized I get paid more as a leader and as a motivator and as a hiring strategist and retention strategist than I ever would as a practitioner.
Yeah. Those little special bold moments in the chapters you put in there. One of the special bold phrases you said, it always shocks you that when you ask people about the 80-20 rule, how many people know it and understand it, but don't actually follow it. And I think this really kind of ties this conversation together a little bit. Like, as I read that, I'm thinking like, yeah, I know what healthy eating looks like, but I don't always follow it. Or I know what my highest dollar per hour looks like, but do I always prioritize it? I think I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not perfect, right? But a lot of people know it and don't even prioritize it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think step one is to ask yourself an honest question. Again, going back to the wheel of life, because you can't really absorb your entire success story in one bite. It's got to be segmented and go, in this category, am I where I want to be? And if you're not, then you have to develop a sense for what one or two things could I do to move the needle farthest, fastest? And
Yeah.
then start there, start
So,
there. And,
yeah.
don't try to do it all. Do the things that matter most, because, just to recap what the 80-20 is, some people, we act like we know it again. And I'm not sure everyone knows it, so I'll say it. But basically what that rule, was a Pareto, was like an economist in Italy, somewhere in an Italian village. And in the 1600s realized 80% of the wealth lived inside of 20% of the population. So there was a disproportionate amount of money in a smaller group. And then as his studies went on, he realized, man, there's a disproportionate input output in every aspect of life. That 20%, if 80% of what you want, comes from 20% of the source, why would you invest your time doing the 80% stuff? And it sort of lends itself also to that dollar per hour question of, if you're doing $15 an hour work, that's what you get paid. You can't make $200 an hour doing $15 an hour work. If you outsource and subcontract it to someone else and substitute it, then you compound a return.
Boom.
So 80-20, it's we act like it, but here's the other thing. If I looked at your day planner right now, even you, Brett, I can tell you what level of joy, accomplishment, passion, I'll know exactly what you stand for because of what I can see in your day planner. If it's not planned, that's reality, not what you think and say and what you profess to the world and how you have, in conversation, so just take a
100%.
hard look at your day planner and get real with, am I really living my priorities, or am I just talking about them and then letting the world kind of dog, the tail wag the dog?
Well, we had a conversation in a different show. And the truth is sometimes we're really good at putting work things on our calendar, but not great at putting personal things on our calendar. Or whether that's health or relationships and things like that, right? So
Yeah.
it the cool part about this book and Stop Settling is it's the well-balanced life, right? And that there's no such thing as a well-balanced life. There's a well counterbalanced life, right? But it speaks to personal, it speaks to health. We're not just talking life in the career lane, right?
100%. But once
Right.
you figure out how to make enough money, I would challenge everyone on the call to take a deep breath and own why making more money is important. And if there's not a clear correlation to that regret-free ending and at the end of your life, if it doesn't really matter, stop investing so much time and energy unless it feeds or fuels other aspects of life. I mean, the goal is to have enough money, A, to get to the finish line, and B, to fund the perfect life.
There you go.
And so if your priorities aren't depicted, and you you said it earlier, like time will backfill, like whatever amount of time you dedicate to something, oh, it'll fill itself with things and experience or things to do
Yeah.
list basically. And I think the number one piece of advice I would give is plan out, your personal life. If your family, friends, and inner circle and their priorities, they should get scripted first. There's a great tool out. I have a friend who uses it called Calendly, where he literally sends me a link and then it shows me when he's available for me. He doesn't just say, when do you want to meet? He already prescribed exactly when he's dedicated time for me and the other people that he allows to enter his world. And I think it's brilliant.
There you go. I want you to bow tie this conversation. There's a section in this chapter called Write Your Own Story, but let me read this real quick. It says, when you look back on your life and consider the choices you made and how you spent your time, I believe you will say one of two things. Either I wish I had or I'm glad I did. What you need to realize as soon as possible is that it's your story. So the plot now comes on the plot from now on is up to you. You can no longer edit your past, but you have the final authority to write all future chapters the way you want. What does write your story mean?
I mean, it's all about intentionality and it's all about purpose and making sure that, again, if you take a deep introspective dive into what is your intention while on this earth, what is the intended outcome, what are the experiences that you want to have, and who are the people you want in your life, and if those aren't aligning both at work and personally, you have to make amended changes. You have to be intentional. Organic success just doesn't show up for most people. There may be organic moments of bliss, but if it's strategic and by design, the odds go up absolutely exponentially. And so by scripting a scenario and by creating a path to better day planning and better structured time and making sure that you honor the 80-20 rule and that you're maximizing return, that creates margin. And the margin I'm talking about isn't necessarily financial margin. It's margin in time, because it's the one thing you can't get back. You can't
Oh,
get your health back once you've blown it. You can't get relationships back that are depleted and dissolved. You have to protect and preserve your priorities, and they have to be reflected in your day planner. And when they are, it's an invigorating thought to know that you're doing what you're supposed to do, because it's what, higher power and the energy of your heart and mind are actually fulfilled in the real world, and that you're exercising those muscles so that you build strength and capacity to really make a difference.
boom. Rick, it's only fair. You have to answer one of the questions in the back of the chapter. We do this every episode.
You
So
sure do.
the question is, do you have a bunker? First of all, what's a bunker? And then I want to know what your bunker is.
So bunkers, the concept behind having a bunker is that you protect and preserve your time and your focus long enough to do that, the 20% that matters. And the cool thing is you don't have to, it's not 10 hours a day. I mean, it might be an hour or two of structured strategic exercising of the things that matter most, that dollar productive idea. And for me, it's a physical space. And I just give everyone fair warning. I'm going into my office. In my case, when I'm in Florida, I've got a really cool office that's equipped with a studio for recording. I'm doing the audiobook now. So there's an example of a bunker. I go up, I tell everyone to, shut down the TVs and noise and external factors that would interfere with that goal. And man, I put my head down and I knock down, my goal is 20 pages a day. And so the bunker is just sacred space to stay focused on the big rocks. And, it means turning your phone on do not disturb, or leaving it, in another location that's not even compelling to take a peek at.
Yeah.
It's
I like
eliminating
it.
social media. Here's another bunker. Another bunker is just eliminating the noise when you're in the presence of someone that's important to you. It's leaving your phone in the car on date night. It's, turning off the TV instead of having external noise that constantly distracts you from being present.
Here you go. So it's your door, right? It's the being in that office in the physical space.
It is.
You've created a environment that causes you to succeed, and
Yeah.
that's your bunker.
Well, and I've trained my subconscious and conscious brain to know that when I'm here, it's all about work. I'm getting it done. And then by staying focused long enough, it frees again, it creates more margin to go to the things where you don't have to be, quite as intentional, and you can just be relaxed and present.
Yeah. You're recording this book. Are you going to have like some special voice that we're going to get to listen to?
Yes, it's called My Voice.
There you go.
I'll
Mojo
tell you-
Monday, sir.
Hey, real quick, I have learned this. It's funny. If you're ever going to write a book, you should read your book before you publish it, because it's so weird how, the typewritten word versus, verbalizing. So anyway, it's kind of
There
a
you
fun
go.
realization to know that you speak differently than you type and read. All right.
My
Mojo
name's
Monday.
Rick. My name's Rick.